Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking an absolute sledgehammer to some of the most stubborn, widely believed economic myths out there. We constantly see these headlines that seem to make intuitive sense on the surface, right? But they actually hide a much deeper, unseen reality. In this breakdown, we're going to completely rewire how you look at the world. We'll do this by focusing not just on what happens right in front of your eyes, but on the hidden reallocations of resources that literally shape our entire society. So, let's get into it. Here is our myth-busting agenda for today. First, the broken window fallacy. Second, engines of economic growth. Third, language traps and myths. And fourth, beyond zero-sum thinking.
Section 1. The broken window fallacy. The seen versus the unseen. This first section sets up the core dichotomy that's going to drive this entire explainer. We're talking about the critical difference between what is immediately obvious to us and the hidden costs bubbling right beneath the surface. Let's start with a really provocative question. Does a natural disaster actually boost the economy? Now, intuitively, you might say, well, yes. Think about it. After every major hurricane or earthquake, we're flooded with headlines about massive rebuilding efforts, billions in aid money flowing in, and the sudden creation of thousands of construction jobs. It feels like a total boom, doesn't it?
And guess what? The data actually backs up that exact feeling. If you look at monthly GDP tracked around major natural disasters, it shows a really pronounced increment of growth in the quarters immediately following the event. So on paper, at the surface level at least, the disaster actually looks economically beneficial. But wait a second, we wouldn't ever wish for disaster to stimulate growth, right? That's crazy. So what are we missing here?
Well, to answer that, we have to travel all the way back to 1850. French economist Frédéric Bastiat dropped this brilliantly counterintuitive truth in his essay about what is seen and what is not seen. He used a pretty famous parable. Imagine a shopkeeper's son carelessly breaks a window. The townspeople gather around the broken glass and say, well, hey, look on the bright side. At least the local glazier gets paid to fix it. He'll spend that money and it's going to ripple through the whole local economy.
But Bastiat forces us to stop and look past those visible signs of recovery to the hidden opportunity cost. Yes, the seen reality is the glazier getting paid, but the unseen is what the shopkeeper would have done with that money instead. Maybe he was going to buy a new pair of shoes. Because he had to replace the window, the local cobbler loses out. The money was simply reallocated from the cobbler to the glazier. There is literally zero net benefit to the overall economy. In fact, if you think about it, society is now poor by exactly one window. Section 2. Engines of economic growth. How we actually prosper.
So, if destruction doesn't drive the economy forward, what actually does? To understand this, we need to firmly anchor ourselves to the definition of opportunity cost. It's essentially the benefit you would have received by taking the next best action instead of the action you actually took. Everything you do, every choice you make, costs you the opportunity to do something else, just like the shopkeeper repairing that broken window cost him the opportunity of a brand new pair of shoes.
Building on that, the crucial point is understanding comparative advantage. Now, this is a concept that often feels kind of counterintuitive at first. It's the ability of an actor to produce a good or service for a lower opportunity cost than a competitor. Notice it doesn't say being the absolute best at producing it. That's a huge distinction. It is entirely about what you are giving up to produce it.
Let's look at a really practical example to make this concrete. Imagine you have a budget to buy books and DVDs, and you have two stores, Bookend Books and Mockbuster. Now let's say Mockbuster is cheaper for literally everything. They have an absolute advantage across the board. But if you look closely at the opportunity cost, it actually costs you more in terms of giving up DVDs to buy books at Bookend. By taking advantage of the different opportunity costs between the two stores, meaning buying books where their relative cost is lowest and DVDs where their relative cost is lowest, you actually end up with more books and more DVDs overall than if you just shopped at the supposedly cheaper store for the whole shebang. It's wild, but the math works.
And this brilliantly illustrates how comparative advantage works in the real world. Think of a world-class heart surgeon. Let's say this surgeon is also an incredibly fast typist and highly organized. She has an absolute advantage over everyone else in the office when it comes to filing patient records. Should she do her own filing? Absolutely not. Her opportunity cost of filing is massive. It's the exact time she could spend saving lives in surgery. Even though she's technically better at filing than the receptionist, specializing where her efficiency is highest makes both her and the receptionist prosper.
We can actually apply this exact same logic to technology and automation. When machines enter the workforce, three distinct things happen. First, you get the productivity effect. The economy gets bigger simply because we're producing more. Second, the displacement effect. Capital literally takes over tasks previously done by human labor. pushing humans out of those specific jobs. But third, and honestly most importantly, is the reinstatement effect. New technologies create entirely new tasks, where human labor holds the comparative advantage, reinstating workers into new and often way better roles.
Let's see how this builds historically, because this isn't a new phenomenon at all. Back in the 18th century, spinning and weaving automation caused massive displacement, even triggering the infamous Luddite riots. Then in the 19th and 20th centuries, horse-powered reapers and eventually tractors displaced millions of agricultural workers. Today, it's software and artificial intelligence displacing white-collar tasks. But historically, that displacement effect has always been counterbalanced by technologies that reinstate labor into a broader, more valuable range of tasks. You know, we didn't run out of jobs when the tractors arrived. We just moved to tasks where humans held the new comparative advantage.
Before we move on, if you're finding this breakdown useful, hit subscribe and the like button. It helps the channel cover more topics people pretend to understand.
Section 3. Language traps and myths. Why we get it wrong.
So, if these economic engines of growth and trade are so mathematically beneficial, why does the public so often get it completely backwards? Well, a lot of it comes down to what we can call the linguistic mindset. We constantly fall into these linguistic traps by applying everyday definitions to really precise economic concepts. Take the word demand. In everyday life, demand means an adamant desire, like I demand you listen to me. But in economics, demand specifically means a willingness and an ability to pay. Period. Similarly, people view scarcity as an absolute lack of something, whereas economists view it as relative. It's just availability compared to desirability. We also fall for the household fallacy. That's when we use the language of a household budget to fundamentally misunderstand government debt, assuming they work the exact same way. Using everyday language to understand complex macroeconomic systems severely distorts our worldview, and frankly, it leads to some pretty terrible policy ideas.
And this linguistic confusion? It feeds directly into the protectionist mythology. This is that old mercantilist belief that trade is a zero-sum game. The idea that if someone else is winning, you must be losing. It leads to the myth that imports cost domestic jobs, all based on the completely false assumption that there's only a fixed number of jobs in the world to be divvied up. But remember, 95% of consumers live outside the US. The economic pie isn't fixed, it grows.
Just look at the numbers. Over the last century, exports, imports, and total trade as a share of the economy have steadily risen. As Adam Smith pointed out way back in 1776, trade without force or constraint expands overall opportunities. It boosts income and drives job creation precisely because it relies on that concept of comparative advantage we talked about earlier. When we specialize and trade freely, everyone gets wealthier. It's a win-win.
Section 4. Beyond zero-sum thinking. The takeaway.
All right, let's synthesize everything we've learned today to completely dismantle the zero-sum worldview once and for all. We have to bring in Adam Smith's ridiculously famous concept of the invisible hand. Now, this term is constantly misunderstood as some sort of shadowy Wall Street conspiracy. But Smith actually used it to describe something beautiful: how unintended public benefit arises from absolute pure self-interest.
Smith explained this with a really brilliant analogy of a selfish, proud landlord. Imagine this landlord looks at his massive fields and wants to consume the entire harvest all by himself. But, his stomach has limits. His vain desires for luxury, fancy clothes, grand palaces, shiny baubles, force him to employ thousands of people. In his absolute selfishness, just to get what he wants, he inadvertently feeds and employs the very people he otherwise wouldn't care a bit about. The invisible hand is just the mechanism where pursuing your own comparative advantage inevitably benefits the broader society.
So, let's lock in the core takeaways of this explainer. First, destruction is never an economic stimulus. Always look past the broken window to the unseen opportunity costs. Second, specialization and comparative advantage are what actually grow the economic pie. And third, through the invisible hand, acting in your own economic self-interest through voluntary trade inadvertently advances the whole of society. To see this clearly, economists use a cool tool called ceteris paribus, which is just Latin for all other things being equal, to isolate variables and see the true effects of a choice. Moving past those linguistic traps, utilizing tools like ceteris paribus, and seeing these unseen realities, that is the ultimate superpower for any focused learner.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a basic misunderstanding of economics blinds us to the hidden costs of a simple broken window, what unseen innovations, what uncreated industries, and what unhired jobs are we currently sacrificing in our modern world due to zero-sum thinking?
Thank you for hanging around until the end. If you want to see more documented deep dives, hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next one.